Okay, so this is part two because the internet cut out on me there. So we talked about hyperinflation. Again, hits the middle class the hardest because their savings are wiped out. The wealthy have their wealth in actual items that still retain their value. A car, for example, still has value regardless if the economy is doing well or poorly. Like people could still buy it for some amount of money. And the poor don't have any money really to begin with, so they're not affected that hard. So the middle class are the ones that are really struggling. Um, but the other trouble that we run into with the Weimar Republic is the political turmoil. They face a number of uprisings, from the Spartacist uprising in Berlin, with communists fighting moderates for control of the national government, to the Freikorps. The Freikorps are these paramilitary groups that are like mostly World War I veterans and military guys that go out and basically are fighting communists. Who, again, communists are anti-nationalists. They don't care about your country. And if you're a military guy, if you're a nationalist, all you care about is your country. So they're kind of natural enemies. So the Freikorps are going around, they're killing communists. And they are these disciplined, military hardware, military tech kind of guys that are going around and killing communists. Not something that's ideal to have. Largely left, I don't want to say uninhibited, but the Weimar Republic kind of didn't pick that fight because they were fighting the communists mostly. And the communists also wanted the Weimar Republic dead. So, if you've got two enemies and one's killing the other, you kind of step back and let them take care of each other. And then hopefully in the end, you're still standing or in a strong enough position that you can actually do something. And then let's not forget these guys, top right, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the NSDAP, or Nazi for short. They attempted to take over the government in 1923, led by this man right here, Adolf Hitler. You guys see Goering on the left. Don't recognize the other guys, so I'm sure I'd recognize their names. I'm sure Ernst Röhm is there too. These are early Nazi figures, the part of the brown shirts, and they're going to march on the city hall in Munich to try and, again, take over the city and launch a massive revolution across the board. It fails miserably. And we'll talk more about why when we talk to the rise of power of Hitler. But keep in mind that you have these constant, we're not just talking about people debating and angry or polarized. We're talking about legit gun battles in the streets. We're talking about gang warfare happening in a regular occurrence inside of Germany's cities. Now, I know there was violence at the Capitol, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, but hopefully that's mostly a one-off. We're not seeing left-wing radicals face off with right-wing radicals inside the cities on a regular basis like you are during the days of the Weimar Republic. So the Weimar Republic is constantly facing these rebellions from the left and right wings. And what ends up happening here is as long as the left and right are evenly balanced, they are going at each other. And the kind of center left a little bit, Weimar Republic, they are largely left intact. But when the communist threat dissipates, and you're left with just the powerful right wing, you're going to see them take over. And we'll talk more about that with the rise of the Nazi Party and Hitler in particular. Now, one of the neat things about the Weimar Republic is it also saw a flourishing of German culture, as the Constitution gave every German the right, within the limits of general laws, to express his opinion freely by word, in writing, print, in picture, form, or any other way. So what ends up happening here is you have a constitutional right to freedom of expression. And now you have this explosion of creativity and artistic production that allows people to create these things that we've never really seen before. So there's this innovative mood that really comes across with the Weimar Republic as you have this horrific catastrophe in World War I, this feelings of anxiety and fear and nervousness, but also a level of freedom. So it's kind of this interesting combination of things. And as a result, you get paintings like this. So this is your pre-World War I style of painting, German style, Fritz Mackensen. You see the mother with the child, breastfeeding the child in the kind of agricultural field. This is what you would typically see of traditional German art. The style of it, the painting style is, clearly impressive. The person knows how to paint. They paint a very impressive picture, 3D depth, coloring, lighting, the whole 9 yards. But it's a very traditional, a woman traditionally dressed in a traditionally female role in the agricultural field, which is, again, kind of traditional. So it's very much kind of looking back on where Germany's coming from and the traditional roles of people and traditional forms of art. So that's kind of standard there. In the pink area, you have post-World War I, and you can kind of see the dramatic, not just in terms of scape of this thing, in terms of how it's laid out. one being obviously a collage of sorts and the other being a painting. But it's a dramatic departure in terms of what it's including, unflattering portrayals of people, particular politicians. It certainly puts one at unease. It's non-traditional in every sense of the word. Everything about it is wildly untraditional. And that's really what we're taking a look at here. That's really what we're examining, is that World War One has really shaken people's faith in traditional institutions. So they're breaking away from that. And before World War One, the governments wouldn't have allowed that. There would have been decency laws and things along those lines. But after World War One, especially the Weimar Republic, you do your thing, because the government has kind of lost its high ground to tell you what you should and should not be pursuing, for lack of a better term. And then this poem here by Wilfred Owen, Dulce decorum est. Basically, it's the old lie, to die for one's country is an honor. The poem here, he's a World War I veteran who actually dies in World War I shortly after he writes this poem. And I'm not going to read it to you. I'd rather you read it yourself. But if you go and check out the actual question here, all right, the last line on the poem is, "It is sweet and fitting to die for one's country." All right. And if you look at it, he calls it the old lie, right? To children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie, it's sweet and fitting to die for one's country. Why do you think that is a lie, as he calls it? And if you kind of read through the poem, you'll begin to see and understand why, because it's graphic. It's very graphic and depressing. And that's really the impact that World War I has, because again, here you have these people who came back from the war and what they saw and what they're exposed to. That's going to have a long-term impact on them. Now, it's not all bad. There is some hope. There are some positive things here, right? While the Weimar Republic is in, touch and go kind of, Europe in general is struggling, you are seeing some benefits. Case in point, you have some political agreements like the Locarno Treaty, in which Germany and France are pledging to respect each other's borders and never go to war again. You have the Kellogg-Briand Pact, which a number of countries renounce war as an instrument of foreign policy. They basically say they're not going to go to war again. And then in 1924, the Dawes Plan is going to help end the hyperinflation crisis in the Weimar Republic by basically backing German money with American money so the Germans can pay off their debts and so forth and so on. We're not getting into the nitty-gritty, but understand that there are some positive things happening. There are some good things. They just seem to be, unfortunately, relatively few and far between at this point. So between the first video and this second one, hopefully you have enough to answer these questions. All right. And if you have any questions, as always, you can email me.